I assaulted 4 people and now trying to live my best life while they suffer. I never thought that I'd be posting my story for advice from internet strangers, but my brother always spoke about how helpful it can be, so here I am, on Reddit. Trigger warning, my story does include some violence. I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Caleb, Cal for short, and I'm a 21-year-old male. I have an identical twin brother, Liam. My brother and I were always the best of friends. No sibling rivalry or anything of the sort. I always wanted what was best for Liam, and he always wanted what was best for me. When Liam and I were 11, he confessed to me that he was attracted to boys and hoped that I would be by his side while he told our parents, currently 46M/F. After around 30 seconds of processing, I turned to him and said, "So you'll still ask Amber if she'll go out with me then?" We both chuckled and proceeded to tell our parents, who, for West Wallian farmers, took it extremely well. The next week we started secondary school, where Liam decided to be open about his true self, and after a year of fighting children our age and much older, people just accepted it. It helped that Liam was an extremely talented athlete and was exceptional at both football and rugby. I wasn't bad either, but he was something special. Now, I sincerely hope that no one takes offense to this, but Liam wasn't exactly what you'd expect from a gay teenager. Or maybe what I should say is that he's not what the media would portray a gay teenage boy to be. He loved his sport, was always seen as just one of the boys, had no feminine tendencies or female friends, and quite frankly, he dressed awfully. When we were both 16, Liam received an academic and sports scholarship to a reputable private school. I stayed home to attend my normal secondary school because, although I'd caught up with him athletically, I was nowhere near as bright. It was rough saying goodbye, but he promised he'd call every day, and to his credit, he did. I loved hearing how he was doing. He was doing amazingly with his rugby and was enjoying the intellectual challenge of his new school. 2 months later, by chance, my school was drawn against his in a rugby cup competition. It was our first time playing against each other. Much to everyone's shock, we managed to win the game, and afterwards, Liam took me to the side to introduce me to Harry, his first boyfriend. He seemed great, and Liam appeared to be really happy, so there were no complaints from me. After a few weeks, his phone calls became less and less frequent. Naturally, I was worried, but chalked it down to the new relationship. We'd still text semi-regularly, but my feelings of worry and anxiety just wouldn't shake off. On the 9th of February 2014 at 8 p.m., I received a call that would change the course of my life forever. I was so excited to see Liam's name pop up, but as I answered, it wasn't Liam, it was Harry. Me. Fucking hell, you took your time. I've missed you. Harry, Cal, it's Harry, not Liam. I'm in the hospital with him. I'll text you the details. Get your parents here quick. My parents and I made the 3-hour trip in an hour and a half. I got to the hospital to see my brother, tubed up and lifeless. Jesus Christ. Every fiber of me shut down seeing him lying there. Harry sat us down and told us all what had happened. 3 weeks prior, 4 boys in the year above had seen Liam and Harry walking through campus holding hands. These boys also played rugby, and they didn't take kindly to one of their teammates being gay. Some heated words were exchanged. One of the boys, Ryan, decided to use a slur, which led to Liam punching him. The 4 of them ended up running away, tails between legs. The next day, after training, Ryan and the other 3 boys, Jason, Jordan, and Brad, decided to jump Liam after rugby training. They proceeded to pin him down and do things to him that I can't bear to repeat here. My brother became a shell of himself for the next 3 weeks. Harry had been trying to convince Liam to go to the police, but he wouldn't. Apparently, the shame he felt, as well as the fear that nothing would come from it, prevented him from coming forward. This was due to the 4 boys coming from wealthy, high-profile families. In the end, it all became too much, and my best friend, my brother, tried to take his own life by overdose on the 9th of February 2014. Harry found him limp on his bedroom floor. 3 days later, Liam came back around. The absolute relief that my parents and I felt was immeasurable. After some convincing, we managed to get Liam to go to the police, and enough evidence was found to take the case to trial. While we waited for the trial, Liam remained dejected. I clung on to the hope that if they were found guilty, he'd maybe regain some of his old self. Harry was brilliant. He'd regularly visit our home to see Liam. You could see that he was the only person who could bring out some semblance of happiness in my brother. On March 14th, we turned 17. Not even the prospect of learning to drive could bring his mood up. We'd always spoken about doing it together. I even fast-tracked my driving test to try and see if taking him out on the road would cheer him up. It didn't. On May 15th, 2014, the 4 boys who assaulted my brother were found not guilty. On May 16th, 2015, Liam successfully took his own life. He took a piece of me with him. My grief consumed me, but I managed to put on a brave face for Liam, for my parents. I managed to give his eulogy and carry his coffin through my pain, but it seemed endless. 3 days after the funeral, I was doom-scrolling Twitter when I came across a memorial post to Liam by his rugby team. I clicked on their page to see a compilation of pictures of his teammates holding his jersey. The 4 boys who assaulted him included all smiles. Here they were claiming to honor my brother, yet highlighting the root cause of his death. They got to go back to normal, back to their happy, sheltered lives, while my brother, whose pain they caused, was literal dust on the mantelpiece. My numb grief had turned into absolute rage. In a blur, I hopped in the car and made the 3-hour trip to their school. After arriving, I called Harry to meet me outside his dorm. I had him point out the dorm where the boys lived. He tried to talk me out of doing anything reckless, but I wasn't hearing it. I pulled a tire iron from the trunk of my car and then entered their building, which was far too easy in hindsight. I planned to knock on every door until I found one of them. 5 doors in, I found Ryan. He opened the door, looked at me, and chuckled. I thought the fought was dead. Within seconds, I'd slipped the tire iron down my sleeve and hit him square at the top of his head. I threw him on his bed, tied his arms and legs to the 4 corners, and stuffed his mouth with a balled sock. I waited for him to come around. In my rage, I then proceeded to bash his shins with the tire iron until they were black and blue. Jason entered the room. He went to shout for help, but as the first sound left his mouth, I lunged at him with a headbutt. He was dazed, so I collared him against the wall and asked him where I'd find the other 2. He gave them up without a thought. I pulled the socks out of an unconscious Ryan and proceeded to stuff them into Jason's mouth. I punched him repeatedly in the ribs before headbutting him one last time, breaking his nose and making sure the back of his head hit the wall. I walked across the corridor to the room Jordan and Brad were meant to be sharing. They were there. I coughed to get their attention before hitting Jordan flush in the cheek with the tire iron. I then turned to a stunned Brad and hit him square on the kneecap. Again, I gagged both of them with a pair of balled-up socks before unleashing every molecule of pent-up rage that was inside me. I grabbed a cricket bat from the corner of the room and let loose on both of their legs, like with Ryan. I hit until they were black and blue. I could feel bones breaking under the force of the bat. Once I'd finished, I walked out to see streams of boys at their doors, looking at me horrified. The whole time, I felt like I was living in some lucid dream, spiritually detached from the rest of the world, yet in mind and body completely present. I sat in my car, called my parents, and gave them a dulled-down version of what happened. I told them I'd leave the keys in the wheel arch. I called Harry, thanked him for all he'd done for my brother, before calling the police myself. The police officers arrived while I was sat in my car. I opened the door, placed my hands on my head, and dropped to my knees. I informed them where the boys were before willingly entering the back of their car. I was processed and charged with attempted murder, staring at a potential life sentence. During my interview, I was told the severity of the boys' injuries. Ryan, fractured skull, bilateral shattered tibia, and bilateral shattered patellar. Jason, fractured skull, broken nose, and 7 ribs broken bilaterally. Brad, fractured eye socket, shattered pelvis, shattered tibia on the right side. Josh, shattered patellar on the left, shattered left femur, broken tibia on the left side. The story hit the press, which initially spelled doom for me. But suddenly, our side of the story came out. The media spoke of Ryan's abuse and how they were let off, resulting in his suicide. This apparently swung the sympathy of the public in my favor. Harry contacted Louise 63F, a solicitor renowned for her work raising awareness of violent crime against people within the LGBTQ+ community. After hearing Ryan's story and the likely reasons behind my crimes, she agreed to take my case. With her hard work and a sympathetic judge, on August 5, 2014, I was sentenced to 4 years in prison for grievous bodily harm. Last week, I was released after serving my 4 years. My parents and Harry have been incredible support since my release. However, yesterday, I received a letter, a petition from the families of my victims to send me back to prison, citing that my crimes have held a lasting effect on the victims, thus should be resentenced accordingly. I'm not too worried at this point, but have been thinking about the injuries I've caused. Reddit, am I wrong for just wanting to live my life at this point? What's up, Reddit? I can't believe it's been nearly 2 years since my first post. I never planned on updating, but a lot of you have been after an update on my life, so here I am. But first, I'll answer your 2 most common questions. And no, I didn't go back to prison. Firstly, a lot of you wanted to know how life in prison was for me. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. I can't say it was pleasant, but not exactly what the movies would have you think. Due to my age, I was placed in a young offenders unit. Luckily, I was placed in a unit that allowed me to continue with my A-levels. I finished with an A in maths and physical education and a C in biology. My second year inside was spent tutoring other prisoners and applying to universities. I was accepted by a local uni to study sports science remotely for the remainder of my sentence, and in person for my 3rd and final year. I graduated last June. The first couple of months inside weren't the easiest. A lot of other guys tried to intimidate me into handing over any luxuries I was afforded, clothes, shoes, food, etc. But I figured out early that if you fight back and refuse to be intimidated, people tend to just leave you alone. For the whole of my sentence, I was bunked up with Charlie, 23M, a boy from a middle-class background who'd stupidly gotten himself involved with County Line's drug gangs. We tiptoed around each other for a while, but eventually warmed up to each other, and he's now one of my closest mates. He'll be getting out in a year and serving the rest of his sentence in a Category B adult prison. The second thing a lot of you wanted to know was my relationship with Harry and my parents. Well, simply put, Harry became a 3rd son to my parents and another brother to me. His support has been unwavering through Leon's passing and my being sent down. To put it simply, Leland is family. He even introduced us to his new partner Tom, 28M, as his family. My life, aside from the 4 years locked up, has been no different from that of a normal 23-year-old thus far. I graduated from uni, and they kept me on as a strength and conditioning coach with their sports teams, and a semi-professional rugby team took a chance on me. I still live with my parents and have casually dated a few girls, but nothing serious yet. The only disappointment I have is that I would love to have been a teacher, but you know, criminal record. I miss Liam all the time. Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and wonder if this is how he'd look now too. Or would he have done something different? Changed his hair? Started dressing well? I'll never know, and that hurts. But on to the juicy details I'm sure you've all been hoping for, and the reason I decided to update my previous post. 6 months ago, I was approached by a group of filmmakers wanting to make a documentary about my story. I was hesitant at first, but Harry and my parents saw it as a good opportunity to get our side and Lime's story out there, so I agreed. What I didn't know at the time was that the 4 boys, my victims, were also approached to be in the same documentary. From what I've heard, they tried to portray themselves as polite, well-mannered, and respectful young men. They tried to give the impression that they were firm friends with Liam and that the allegations against them were just teammate banter taken out of context. They tried to play it off that I was just looking for someone to blame for his death and took it out on them. 4 months ago, when there was a break in filming, their masks slipped. The 4 of them bragged about what they did to my brother and that their injuries were worth it now that there was one less FOD on the streets. They also gloated that their parents were able to pay off some of the jury to get them off. The camera was still rolling. When the filmmakers were editing the documentary, they noticed what had been said. They immediately informed us and told us that the footage was ours if we wanted it. However, Jason's Aether somehow caught wind of what had been found out. He approached them and offered a substantial amount of money for their silence. Being high up in one of the TV networks, he also offered to commission the documentary if they swung the narrative in the boys' favor. Lola, 35F, the head of the project, had a lot of integrity and went against him. She'd also secretly recorded their conversation for her safety. That was the final nail in the coffin. Last week, Ryan, Jason, Brad, and Josh were sentenced to 15 years each, 10 of which will be served in custody. Jason's father, Mark, 64M, was sentenced to 4 years for perverting the course of justice, 2 of which will be served in custody. The boys are being sent to the same jail as Charlie. He's already promised me he'll help make their lives as uncomfortable as possible. The documentary will be coming next year. They've decided to tell more of Liam's story, talk about his life, and highlight the gem that he was. It's due to come out on Netflix, but this virus they're talking about might slow things down. As happy as we are as a family with the outcome of the trial and the 4 boys being brought to justice, the sadness of losing a brother, a son, and a partner still weighs heavily on the heart. I just hope that wherever my brother is, he's at peace. Hi Reddit, it's been 4 years since my last post, and like before, I never intended on posting again. The reason for posting is that it's been 10 years since my brother passed. Jesus, I can't believe it's been that long. Not a day goes by when he's not on my mind. Being emotionally and mentally resilient has been difficult, but I know he'd want me to stay strong. I logged onto this account yesterday for the first time in 4 years, and the notifications came flooding in. You guys seem to be keen to know what's going on in my life, and my friends and family too. I'll start with myself. Aside from the bouts of sadness I feel missing my brother, I'm doing pretty well. I'm still working at my old university with the sports teams, and I'm also lecturing in sports science. The documentary about Liam came out over the COVID period and was really well received. Luckily, due to the lockdowns, I was able to keep a low profile at the time. My best friend Charlie got out of prison 3 years ago. He's doing really well and is finishing his social work degree. He already has a job lined up at our old young offenders unit. At Charlie's release party, I met his sister Hannah, 29F. Much to Charlie's dismay and eventual approval, we got to talking, hit it off, and actually got engaged last month. We have a 1-year-old son, and you guessed it, his name is Liam. My parents were ecstatic, and so was Harry to be named godfather. On to Harry. When I last posted, he was seeing Tom, and things seemed to be going well. Unfortunately, Harry cheated on Tom and they broke up, which led to him going on a bit of a spiral. A few months back, Harry called me needing someone to talk to. He confessed to me that he never really loved Tom. He's never been able to love anyone the way he did my brother. He's worried that he'll be alone for the rest of his life because he simply can't move on. I assured him that one day he will, and when he does, we will be with him every step of the way. But what he can't do is give someone a sense of security in a relationship when he doesn't love them in the same way, and that cheating is an absolute no. He seems to be getting back to his old self, slowly. Harry and I, although we understand each other's grief, have come to appreciate that it's also very different. I lost a brother, someone I considered very much a part of me, my best friend. He lost his person, not just someone with whom he fell in love, but his person, the individual he would have likely spent his life with, shared all of his ups and downs with, who he would have built a family with. So I ask you, reader, not to judge him on his actions with Tom, as deplorable as they were, but to try and understand that the only people who can understand his pain would be others who have lost their person. A lot of you asked what Harry's relationship with his own family is like. Unfortunately, there isn't one. Harry is from an old money family who disapproved of his sexuality. They essentially threw his trust fund at him and washed their hands of him. My parents and I love him like family, therefore to us, he is. My parents, like me, miss my brother immeasurably. They too have their good days and bad days, but since little Liam was born, I'm starting to see the mom and dad I had before my brother passed. I want to finish this post by answering a question that's been on my mind since reading it yesterday. If I were to see my brother one more time, what would I say to him? My answer is, I don't think I'd say anything. I'd pull him into a hug. I'd try and hold him so tightly that he'd never be able to leave again. God, I'd do anything for that. Cherish the ones you love, Reddit. Let them know you love them.